Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Dig. Today is February 23rd, 2023. You're joined by your host, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, with co-host John Barr, Jessica Knock, and our special guest tonight, Lisa Maria out of Jerusalem. Oh, hey, fancy that. Today is February 23rd. We get a double quote. Hallelujah. Yes. All right. So with that being said, our discussion tonight is judgment on the house of Babylon. We'd like to welcome everybody here today who is joining us for our conversation. Thank you, subscribers, for being available and being in the chat. It's very good to see you all here. It's nice to have your comments coming through the chat and to share your subscription with other people. Of course, the more the merrier, until that one guy gets in anyway. Other than that, everything's great. But I'm just kidding, you know that. But anyway, tonight I want to start with a little bit of humor because after all, we're going to be talking about judgment on the house of Babylon. Now, for this reason, I brought in our esteemed group of guests here, Jesse, who's hailing out of the British Isles, somewhere near an undisclosed location around Birmingham. And John Barr, who comes from the deep south, deep south, still within flight range of the NASA Air Force Base. And Lisa Maria, who's coming really from downtown Jerusalem in the nation state of Israel. So I want to welcome you, Lisa. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Cat must have your tongue. Oh, okay. There you go. I'm sorry. I didn't hear. I had I've got the audio up. Hang on just 1 second. I've got to do something here to try to disclose something of a nature here. However, now, and I want to welcome you, Jessica Knock, coming all the way from the British Isles in the wee hours of the morning. Of course, for both of you, it's quite late, isn't it?
Late. It's later for Lisa by an hour or two, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an hour.
And last but not least, my good friend John Barr, who is really kind of the brains of this outfit. John, how are you?
I'm okay.
All right. Well, we're going to hold you
Catching up.
We're going to hold you to the standard of being our meteorological expert. Yeah. If we get to that issue, if we get to meteorology. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. And of course, I want to welcome all those in the chat and those who are watching this later. So, I have to admit that this whole sequence of events concerning this prophecy is really pretty heavy. And, as I was reading through it, and of course, watching the worldwide events, and normally we like to concentrate on scripture here, and we're going to concentrate on scripture tonight and quite a bit of it. But one of the things that comes up, and it's a question that is asked by many people in prophetic circles, who is Mystery Babylon described in Revelation 17? That's always a big question. And the next question is, if we can determine who Babylon is the destruction of Babylon in the wind? And I think now we've seen it more than any other time ever, that we have arrived at a point that we have the destruction of Babylon before us. And it's just crazy where we've gone. And it's amazing how we've gotten there. There's a representative in the EU from Ireland who's a person who I really enjoy. First of all, I like his accent there coming from the Irish Isles there. He gives me a wee bit of the Gaelic there. In fact, his accent is, his accent is a full, crack of 90 is what it is. And, but anyway, he came out and he told the EU 2 days ago, the lunatics are running the asylum. And I think this is so true. Recently, the president of Estonia, who is a woman, she appears to have less of a geographical headset than Liz Truss, which, as you know, was a significantly handicapped individual in terms of understanding the ways of the world. In fact, in the immortal words of the Scottish press, we saw it in the headlines when we were in Gretna Green in Scotland, that she's a flipping Egypt, is how the Scottish put it. It's how the Scots put it. But this woman came out in Estonia and said that Russia needs to be divvied up and destroyed. And she said this 2 days ago. And Wallace, addressing the EU Parliament, said The lunatics are running the asylum. Now, I think this is a pretty good description that we have irrational people in leadership who are absolutely bent on war and nothing but war, no matter the cost, no matter how expensive. For some reason or another, most of the positions of power that are making the decisions in the world are women. The one exception, of course, being the clown over in Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, who was promoted from comedian to president. Now, where Zelensky is concerned, he is essentially steering the world into a war with Russia. He wants more and more and greater war. And so does the president of Estonia, apparently, and the president of Latvia has made similar remarks. The president of Lithuania has tried to start a war by closing off the passageway to Kaliningrad. And we see similar leadership in Germany, where the defense minister, again a female, saying that NATO is at war with Russia, live to the German parliament. In the United States, we have a woman there in control too, Victoria Nuland, who is also openly advocating the bombing of Crimea. And she has made this explicit as recent as 3 days ago. So we see that people really want war. They're begging for war, they're asking for war, they want war, they desire war, and they're trying to push for war. Well, one of the questions that arises in a war is, first of all, will it go nuclear? That's a big question. And Lisa, I'm sure, is going to bring some insight to the table on that in terms of some of the things that she has been shown medically.
Yeah.
And we're also going to be talking about, in the event of such a war, who is Babylon? Well, I want you to take a listen to this kind of passage that we see coming from the book of 4 Ezra, which we'll review a little bit more during the course of our discussion. Behold, says Yahuah, I will bring plagues upon the world. Well, what are these plagues? The sword, famine, death, and destruction. Now, I can tell you, we've already seen this in dramatic amounts in Ukraine. Whole cities are destroyed. We also see it in Syria. Cities have been destroyed, whole neighborhoods, whole areas. And what has accompanied the destruction of those cities is famine and death. And of course, the destruction was brought by the sword, For wickedness has exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. Therefore, says Yahuah, I will hold my tongue no more as touching their wickedness, which they profanely commit. Neither will I suffer them in those things in which they wickedly exercise themselves. In other words, I'm not going to let you get away with your wicked behavior. Behold, the innocent and righteous blood cries unto me, and the souls of the just complain continually. You know, when we talk about the dead, the innocent dead, you know, there's just massive amounts of innocent dead in Tunisia, in Libya, in Egypt, in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. You know, it was known that when we were in Afghanistan during the Obama years, I believe it was Obama was steering drones in the White House, was running drones in the White House, and he would target his enemies flying a drone, you know, from a computerized screen in the White House and sending hellfire missiles into funerals. Now, this would be where we had killed a terrorist, and what we labeled it as a terrorist. They might consider such a person a patriot to the Afghan nation. But we killed this terrorist, and then his family would gather together to have a funeral for him. And Obama would take that as an opportunity to kill everybody, launching a hellfire missile in, taking out his wife and his kids and his grandkids and his brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, and so on. And so when you see this, this is just one kind of death, but the kind of death that came to Syria is much more dramatic, because in Syria, Syria had launched no act of aggression against the United States whatsoever. None, zero, none, not at all. And yet the United States saw fit to fund, train, and launch ISIS into that community, and to in turn bring in cruise missiles and bomb various targets in Syria. and to do so in order to capture the oil that was being produced in Western Syria, which was then captured by ISIS, sold on the black market through Turkey, Erdogan's son running the oil, and being sold into European markets. This was looting and pillaging, spoiling, taking a prey. And there were hundreds of thousands of refugees that resulted. Hundreds of thousands of refugees from Afghanistan. Hundreds of thousands dead in Iraq from the use of spent uranium in the munitions we were using that not necessarily killed people when they first went off, but killed people thereafter when they were exposed to uranium, spent uranium in the field. So what we see a lot of collateral damage, and we see collateral damage. We can't leave out the collateral damage done in the former nation state of Yugoslavia, where a civil war was exacerbated by NATO and US involvement. And in that civil war, you saw really severe bloodletting between the Serbs and the Bosnians and the Croatians and so forth. And here you had a country like in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And John, I think you know a little bit about this war. We saw in Bosnia, there were actually tripartite religions living in Bosnia. So you had mosques in Sarajevo, you had Orthodox churches, and you also had Jews living in Sarajevo, living amongst each other. Now, certainly there was, the tacit animosity that comes between the people groups, but it was not civil war. When the Civil War broke out, the question was, were they going to retain a national unity that constituted Yugoslavia, or were they going to be Balkanized? Now, John, tell us a little bit about your experience. Wasn't the Balkans kind of dispositive for you in terms of finalizing your career?
Yeah, you could say that because once I got over there, and let me go back. Before I went to Kosovo, I was in Italy in, I don't know, about 1993, when all of this was coming apart. And I saw a lot of refugees where we were in Vicenza. And I got interested with what was happening over there. So when I came back, I found a little book, and I would suggest anybody wants to know the background of that region. It's an excellent short read called The Balkan Ghosts. The Balkan Ghost. Small book, but it's very, very well written. This issue over there, Yugoslavia is a fabricated country. It didn't exist until, I think, after World War I. So it was cobbed together and eventually became communist, but it was under Marshal Tito, and there was no love lost between him and Moscow, actually. But in that region, you had three religions, and this goes all the way back to the time of the Roman Empire. The Roman Catholics are in there, they're Croatian. The Islam is in there, they're basically the Bosnian people. And the Orthodox Eastern Empire people were Serbs. And as long as Yugoslavia was the umbrella of all this, Tito's basic rule says if you don't follow the rules, I'll just wipe you out, because he didn't want any religious fighting. So they were all mixed up and living together like you're describing. But what happened is Yugoslavia was coming apart and was made to even come apart faster because the ethnic religious issues began to tear the whole thing apart. So that was created for the purpose of NATO to get in there and act as a mediator, and all this orchestrated by the United States. And in 1994, while I go back to that, I was in Italy for a training exercise with NATO. And it was a computer war game where an adversary northern kingdom is going to attack the passive southern kingdom. They're going to start a war of a fictitious nation called Titania. And there was one group who played the role of the aggressors in the north. There was another group, which was us and Vincenza, who played the south. And NATO was on the line. Actually, they were part of it. So they were to intervene once this thing started. And I was in the middle of it. It's the first computer war game done like this. Big screen and all that. The aggressors were the Alabama National Guard, way over in Alabama. We're in Italy, and NATO's up in Brussels. And anyway, so.
Can I ask what year that was?
I think that was 93,
Okay.
94, something like that. And see, the Kosovo thing didn't pop until 99. But all this other stuff, ethnic cleansing, started pretty quick after that. So I was watching all that, and I thought, you know, when this settles down, I want to go over there or get over there, because it's behind the Iron Curtain in East Europe, and I've never been anything anywhere over there. And this goes back to, that's a migration path coming that way out of the Asia, South Asia. So that was the beginning of backtracking the migration routes. And I had an opportunity to go, so I went in 2002. It was the third rotation, so it was a peacekeeping mission, not war fighting. And the peace was kept by the rules of engagement that were published quite widely, that anyone, and there were several NATO countries in there, including the United States, including Russia. Russian troops were in there with the U.S. In the U.S. sector, which was right up against the Serb border. So the Russians were really, they were up against the Serb border too, because they're Slavic. So they're like cousins. And it made the Serbs kind of like feel a little bit better than NATO guns looking at them. So anyway, this was what was going on over there. And when I was there, it didn't take long. I figured out, you know, we started this, we created this. And it goes back to that little exercise. They were preparing to intervene in the Balkans and playing a war game to that effect. So nevertheless, the end of it was that Croatia was created for Croatians. And I was in a village up in the mountains. There were probably 500 homes in there, totally empty. Totally empty. Beautiful fruit trees. Everybody had fruit trees. Plums. They made wine. Made their own wine. Anyway, beautiful mountainous place. And the only thing in the city that was still monitored by some people who were like caretakers was the Roman Catholic Church in that city. That town, wasn't a city, just a town. So the Croatians were offered by the government of Croatia, the new country created to separate these ethnic religious groups, to come to Croatia, and they paid them, paid everything to move, leave your town. And so the whole town moved. It was totally vacant. And I asked my translator, some of the homes were kind of nice. I asked him, what do you think these houses would sell for? I said, I don't know. He said, maybe $1. That's, and the captain that was with me, we were real interested. We thought we could open a place over there, a cafe down here, you know, barbecue, live over here in these other places.
Yeah.
Well, I said, who would we talk to about buying one of these houses? The translator said, you can talk to me.
Did you get one?
No. I did bring back a clay, a piece of pottery. I found almost all of the pieces. It was broken,
Oh, wow.
but I picked them up on the way out of there because I thought, I'm gonna put this thing together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, you know. And I got it sitting right behind me in the shelf.
Really
Yeah,
Anyway, I
interesting.
brought that home as a souvenir. But
fascinating that they simulated that war. Who was playing the war? If you were watching it, who was playing it?
well, we were active duty members of the National Guard from Vermont, and the other group in there was National Guard, Army National Guard from Texas. And I wasn't really on the manifest to go, but when I found they were going to do this, I went and talked to some friends, and I said, "Hey, I'll carry luggage. You know, how do I get on the manifest?" So anyway, I did, and I went. And we had enough people in our group in Vicenza in Italy to stand up a fifth brigade in this war. So I was an extra, but we created a fifth brigade. So it was operations NCO. And in that role as ops NCO, you get to see all the message traffic coming through and disseminate it to whoever it's supposed to go to. So I was seeing the traffic coming down from NATO, what they wanted to intervene, and we ignored them. And I don't think they ever did.
Well, you know, it's interesting when you talk about NATO, John, because, you know, today I read that Boris Johnson is trying to replace Jens Stoltenberg as the minister, the chief minister for NATO. And Boris Johnson, of course, is an extreme hawk and another massive warmonger out of the UK,
Yeah.
who recently advised Rishi Sunak to give all of Britain's aircraft and all of Britain's tanks to Ukraine.
Yeah.
That was his advice. And so we see, and when we get farther into this presentation, we're going to see that, in fact, we're going to see who Babylon is. It's going to become pretty clear by a careful reading of the text. We're going to see who Babylon is, who Mystery Babylon is, and we're going to be able to tell what's happening. And I think we're going to be able to launch into understand some of the judgment. So with that being said, let me drop back into the PowerPoint and let's continue here with our discussion of judgment on the house of Babylon. Okay, little share screen. Pretend I know what I'm doing. Okay, and we can see the Sefer Academy banner. And this is a Sefer Academy production brought to you by Sefer Publishing Group. All scriptural citations are taken from the Sefer Millennium Edition. If you don't have a Sefer Millennium Edition, you can get one at Sefer Publishing Group, sefer.net. And we're happy to get one out to you, free shipping with your purchase. Okay, so here we go. We start with for Ezra. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and the destruction draws nigh. And one people shall stand and fight against another, and swords in their hands. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another, and they shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Now, I find this to be an explicit statement of civil war or revolution. I mean, when you have the phrase sedition among men, they shall not regard their kings nor princes, the authority will not prevail. People are going to rise up, and they're going to rise up in arms, is what this prediction is. The sword and destruction draws
Your
nigh.
screen isn't showing the PDF.
Oh, well, I guess we better go back here and try this screen share again. Let me see if I can get this. Okay, how about that one?
Yeah, it's working
There.
now.
Okay, all right. Now I can do some whiteboard stuff, Jesse, and draw. I can draw. These are all important features. Okay. Now, before we get going farther into this, well, here, let's start here. The Colossus of Rhodes. Now, this is you might ask yourself the question, what are you doing with the Colossus of Rhodes up here? First of all, Rhodes doesn't have anything to do with anything. So what's the Colossus doing up here? But it does. Look, torch in right hand, hand well above the head, head with radiance coming off the head, right? Star spikes. You might immediately recognize those, right? The star spikes. This is the Colossus of Rhodes. Now, the Colossus of Rhodes, interestingly enough, is what it was a statue of the Greek sun god Helios. And it was erected in the city of Rhodes on the Greek island of the same name by Charles of Lindos in 280 BC. It was considered one of the seven wonders of the ancient world and was constructed to celebrate the successful defense of Rhodes against an attack by Demetrius Poliorcetes, who had besieged it for a year with a large army and navy. Now, some people depict the Colossus of Rhodes as standing over the harbor. Most people do not believe that's true because the harbor was never closed for the construction. Far more likely that the Colossus was here, like this, feet together to support a very large structure. Again, one of the seven wonders of the world. Okay. The Colossus featured a dedication. Now, we could read this into Greek, but I'm not going to get that far into it. But to read it in the English, it reads like this. This was the dedication that was written there. To you, O sun, right? Worship of the sun god. The people of Dorian Rhodes set up this bronze statue reaching to Olympus when they had pacified the waves of war and crowned their city with the spoils taken from the enemy. Not only over the seas, but also on land did they kindle the lovely torch of freedom and independence. Okay, so here's part of the reason that we're looking at the Colossus of Rhodes. The reason we're looking is because the torch here is symbolic, is the torch of freedom and independence. Okay, that's going to be significant. That's going to prove to be significant in our discussion here. For to the descendants of Heracles belongs dominion over the land and the sea. All right, fair enough. However, we see that the Colossus of Rhodes was male. Consider, however, the statue of Ishtar, a female. Now, here we're going to see in Ishtar, these are two different statues, but you can see two different replicas. One is Ishtar depicted as exuding the radiances of the sun behind her head, okay? The radiances of the sun. And of course, we see similar radiances here in the statue of liberty. Now, in addition, we also see statues of Ishtar holding up the torch of freedom and liberty, dressed in a gown, right? And so it's readily seeable, the correlation between the torch that is being held here by Ishtar and the torch being held here by the Statue of Liberty. So there's direct correlations here in between the idea of Ishtar or Isis, depending on how you want to call her, and the Statue of Liberty. Libertas was the goddess of freedom because she promoted the ideals for the personal freedom to do anything that felt good. She was called the matron goddess of prostitution because she promoted sexual freedom. Indeed, she had invented the concept. Slaves considered her their goddess in the hopes of winning their freedom. Many women who gained freedom later turned to prostitution to survive and thereby retained Libertas as their goddess, especially if they became priestesses in the Libertas cult. Libertas was also a goddess of war in order to fight for freedom. She was also referred to at times as the goddess of victory because freedom must have victory in order to survive. This goddess was also the goddess of immigrants. This comes from a website called Is There an Ancient Secret Connection Between the Statue of Liberty and the Anunnaki Goddess Inanna? Published on September 28th, 18 on ancientpages.com. Okay. Libertas is the pagan goddess governing American affairs. Is this the God that is referenced in the Pledge of Allegiance? You know, one nation under God. Which God? Is it Libertas? Is it Helios? Is it the Baphomet? Is it Isis, Horus, Set? These are questions. It's not identified, is it? One nation under God. Which God? It begs the question. We'll take a look at this. We're going to take a look at Washington, D.C. Maybe this will give us some clues as to whether or not we can identify the God under which the United States is. So what you see here is the White House. You can see the White House right down here. Here, White House. And the White House sits at the bottom of these roads. You see these roads here? These are actual roads in Washington, D.C. The only one that's not a road here is right here to here. That's not a roadway right there. So that way the pentagram is open, and whatever evil is concocted here in the White House will leak out of the pentagram right here and go in this direction to spew out over the nation.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Do you know if the, do you know what's going on? Am I echoing? Okay. Is the Capitol building at that end? At that I know nothing about Washington. I've never been there.
No, this is the White House is to the north of what's called the mall. The mall is down here.
What
Yes.
building is at that point? Because that's
The White
significant.
House. This is the White House right here.
At the bottom
Right
point
at that
is the
point.
White House?
At the bottom point of the pentagram is the White House.
Okay,
That's where
so
the-
that ties into the back of the dollar bill, the photos that I sent you. We can get to that later. I'll let you finish, but I just wanted to make sure because I didn't know.
No, it's very true. Now, the White House was built after a model that came out of a lord's house in Ireland. But nonetheless, the White House itself, the design of this city was done by a Freemason. And the city was built in this construct following the War of 1812. In 1812, the British burned Washington, D.C. because we burned the capital of Quebec. And when we burned the capital of Quebec, the British decided to repay the favor by burning down Washington, D.C. When they burned down Washington, D.C., the total population was 2,300 people. And basically, they were living in a swamp. It was, what we would call wetland. It's a swamp. And after that, an architect came in and redesigned the entire thing based upon the Masonic order. And this roadway here going to the White House was definitely seated at the base of a satanic pentagram. The 5-pointed star pointed downward is the pentagram. And that's
Right.
definitely the White House. Now, tell us about what you saw on the bill. Which bill were you talking about here, Lisa?
Okay, so like this happened a week ago, which was it was a revelation that was given to me. There was a movie that came up on my YouTube because movies come on all the time that I'm not subscribed to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because I'm getting a weird echo. So
Because you have your speaker on. It's okay.
no, I don't have any speaker on, just the one phone. Okay, so the name of the movie was EMP 333. And I asked Elohim, why is this on my phone? What do you want me to do with it? He said, go look at it. So I go watch it. So he just had me watch a couple minutes, but then he said, I want you to go look up 333, find out what day of the year it is. So I did and uncovered a whole mystery of things that have happened on that day throughout history. And that's November 29th. So that's 11/11. Now we've seen 11/11 for 30 years now, playing on clocks and in media and everything that they do. It's also 9/11 9/11 or 2020. So these are numbers that I know because this is part of, it all ties into my testimony. But then he asked me to do something significant. He said, go look at the back of a $10 bill. So I did. And then he said, go look at the back of a $20 bill. So I did. So on the back of the bill, if you look at it, I don't know, Jessica, maybe you could pull one up so we could show it to everybody. But if you look at it, it has over the White House, there's a capstone. And he told me that the White House, destruction of the White House was the capstone of their plan. As I was looking at the photo. So then he showed me, he gave me a vision of how, so you had asked me last time, where do you see it coming to? And I didn't have any clarity on it. But then he revealed that to me like last week. And so I truly believe now that it's going to be the destruction of the White House, which falls in line and makes perfect sense because they want to destroy America and the government. If there's no White House, there's no leaders. They tried it so he said they've been trying this in various ways throughout history. We can see that, right? So the destruction of the Pentagon, well, we know why that happened, but these things, they've been slowly, perpetrating these situations to get to their goal and taking things down. So
Yeah, interesting.
So the capstone is the White House. And now that I didn't know that it's at the bottom of the pentagram, but that pentagram, well, actually the Jewish star was one of the photos that Elohim had saved to my phone when I was dying was a Jewish star, and it had numbers on it and on the points of the stars, and it went 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, but it skipped 10, and 10 was the bottom point going into the bottom point of the pentagram. Now, and I haven't, the mystery of what does that mean? I know 10 is death to them. I know that, right? We know that. 9/11, and IXXI, and IXXI is also in the Jewish star. I don't know if you know that, but these are things that are, which IXXI is 9/11, and it's in the Jewish star. So that's pretty significant. Pardon?
I didn't know that. When we talk about you're talking about the Star of David, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Now, when you say the IXII is in the Star of David, like where are you seeing this?
IXXI. So if you look at a Star of David, you have 2 X's, kind of like like this one that we're looking at. It's missing a star. It's missing the upper point. But you see how.
Hold on a second. We can always share the whiteboard.
Okay.
Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me,
Do your
Lisa.
thing.
We'll get the whiteboard out there. We'll start sharing that real quick. Okay, so when we deal with the
star.
Okay, so hold on. Let's see if I can draw it here.
2 triangles, one above and one below. So it's as above, so below. This is all things that he revealed to me. And I didn't like geometry or geometry with all the triangles and all that.
Lily Nazareth said something really interesting here. She's just pointing out the Jewish star has 6 points. The pentagram has 5 points.
Yes.
That's right. And one more.
Another thing too about this logo.
Now, when you say so IXXI, so what are you talking about?
Okay, so look at the Star of David. You're missing the sides of it because you don't see the 2 eyes. So, but if you drew a line on each side of the Star of David, draw a line from north to south down, yeah.
North to south down, okay.
Like just a line down. So, but on each side, not there, on the side of the star. Put an eye on each side or a line on each side.
Like this you're talking about?
Yeah, what does that look like? Google, Gmail, Freemasonry.
Yeah, you can see it, yeah.
So the IXXI, so there's a lot with IXXI, and these were things that I had learned. He led me to all this when I was dying. It was like so huge. It's how I discovered 9/11 was an inside job and how they've been using this through history. He saved a photo of a ring that has this print on it, IXXI, which is in Latin numbers 9/11. So
That's right.
So
And when you're talking about IX, that's 9. You could say 9/11.
IXXI, yes.
That's 9. IXXI.
Mhm.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, I see what you're talking about. Mhm.
So
So
these
again,
things
so
have been in there.
you're talking about. So when we look at this, let's do this again. We'll put up the a rudimentary Star of David, one that's more crudely drawn.
And this is a mystery nobody knows, but he told me this when he disclosed this, when he revealed all this to me. That's how
So
the
we see
pyramid is
the-
built.
Yeah, so we see the right here. Okay, so this is X, I.
Mm.
This is I, X, right?
Right.
I, X, X, I. Translate from the Latin 9/11. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you ever seen this, heard of this, or do you know about this?
Mm.
No, I can't say as I do.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's provocative. So there's more to it. So
Yeah, you've
when
already crossed the provocative ground here, Lisa, by using the inside job terminology. You already crossed that. You already crossed that language. Okay, let's keep going. I'm gonna look at this next slide here. Okay,
Okay.
this is more on DC. Take a look at this. Now, this will give you an idea when we're talking about the mall. This is where the Capitol building is. And if you look closely at the Capitol building, this is designed to create an owl. Now, we know also that an owl is a occult symbol. And here's the owl, and this is the Capitol building here, okay? And so the White House grounds lay out here to lay out the owl. Now, I can also tell you that crudely, the mall is really kind of a man, okay? So you have kind of the brains up here. You've got the Supreme Court up here and the Jefferson Library up here. So you can kind of think of this as the ego, the super ego, and the id, with the Supreme Court being the super ego and the id being the Jefferson Library. Then you come down to the White House, which is the right hand. Then, of course, you get to George Washington's monument. We won't talk about what that is. And then you get to the Lincoln Memorial at the bottom, which is the feet stamping out justice, right? Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He has trampled out the vintage of the grapes of wrath. This is what the Lincoln Memorial is all about, trampling out the grapes of wrath. So Lincoln is the feet of this man. The White House is the right hand. The Washington Monument is, shall we say, the center of things. And the brains are expressed in the id, the superego, and the ego, which is the Capitol building, the Supreme Court, and the Jefferson Memorial, the Jefferson Library. But on top of that, the grounds for the Capitol express an owl, an occult symbol that is used to govern, by the way, the Bohemian Grove in California, which is up there in, I think it's in Marin County, Bohemian Grove.
Mm.
That's a satanic place where all the presidents attend for this kind of sexual occult ritual where they do the cremation of care in front of a gigantic owl screaming and howling at them. And it's rumored that they're burning a body in effigy, but nobody knows if it's a real human sacrifice or not.
I believe it is.
Now, take a look at this, Lisa, and you can see here a little bit more of Washington, D.C. So you can see that you have a pentagram here that whose base is at the White House. Then you have the square and compass of the Masonic order, and the pinnacle of the compass is right at the U.S. Capitol building. Okay. Again, here's the Lincoln Memorial at the feet, the White House at the right hand, etc. Okay.
Okay. I've heard they do rituals under the Capitol building.
They do rituals, you say?
I've heard that. I read that in my research somewhere. I would have to do more research, but yeah, I've seen that or heard that.
Yeah,
Which
I've heard
makes
that as
sense.
well, because initially they were going to bury George Washington under the cupola, because they wanted the cupola, like the Vatican, to be buried, to be erected upon a dead body, and they wanted it to be erected upon the dead body of George Washington. Now, here's the statue of George Washington here on the right, and here's the statue of the Baphomet on the left.
Well, I
Makes
have
you wonder.
I have a little revelation about all of that to share. May I?
Okay, sure.
Okay, so all these leaders, we know they're all Masons. We know they're all offspring of fallen angels. Every country, North Korea, I was revealed all this when I was dying, that, and how he revealed it to me was so provocative that I was convinced that these royals or these offspring who believe they're gods or they are God, that's, they're the fallen angels' offspring. So they're all considered gods. They believe they're all considered gods. So this is their Game of Thrones. And I don't even believe that they know which country's going to rule after. It's because they're going to go to war like they've been doing. They've been going to war throughout history, but Elohim said this is their Game of Thrones. This is what they do. They plan for it. Then they have they've let everyone know these 3 world wars are coming. He said it was planned for 400 years, that they've been trying to do it for 400 years. But now, when he woke me, he said, but now it's coming to fruition, and I'm not going to let them finish because of what their ultimate goals are. So the way he explained it to me was, we'll go back to Nelson Mandela. He got taken away to supposedly go to jail. Ahmadinejad, it's a pattern. So Ahmadinejad was a bomber, right? A terrorist in the Olympics in the 70s, right? Okay, and then Putin was with KGB. And then Trump was an actor, Reagan was an actor. So we have all these different players that somehow end up, all these underdogs that somehow become leaders. And so what was revealed to me was, well, they're the offspring of a previous generation of leaders who we see in all of these political arena, right? They don't even raise their own children. They don't raise their own children. They swap them out to somebody else, or they adopt. And so the generational history of the leaders gets lost to this generation. So he's been revealing like who is on the scene now that is actually the offspring of leaders before us that did terrible, terrible things. And it's so overwhelmingly huge, like you would call it a huge conspiracy, right? But when you line it up and you look at them and you see what's going on, there's several things that could be in play. It could either be offspring. It could be that they're fallen angels' offspring that lives longer than us, that has it longer that we don't know. You know what I'm saying? They live on the earth longer. That's why there's so many doppelgangers that are like you could say a dead ringer for somebody. And how come they were 200 years ago, or do they fall out of our public eye until we're gone? Why do they redact?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting when you talk about that, Lisa, because the book of Hanok says that they will live 500 years. Genesis says man's years should be man's days should be 120 years. But Hanok says that the fallen will have a lifespan of 500 years. Now, that's very fascinating that you're raising that issue. And it's an issue that we're not going to be able to look at today. But when you talk about the fact that they've been planning this war for 400 years, I think that's correct. In fact, they've been planning it probably since the Illuminati were formed in 1776. And you see one of the planners that spelled out the 3 world wars in writing. And the impetus behind the 3 world wars was this fellow right here, Albert Pike.
Yeah.
Now, Albert Pike This is his statue in Washington, D.C. You see an angel in front of him holding a flag that has the double-headed eagle on it. Now, this double-headed eagle, we're not going to be able to deal with this prophecy today, but the double-headed eagle is referenced in the book of 4 Ezra. And the double-headed eagle was the symbol for the czars in Russia. They had this double-headed eagle as their symbol. It was also a symbol of the Roman Empire for some period of time. And most people don't know, but Albert Pike worked with an Italian named Manzini, and Albert Pike and Manzini were instrumental in introducing the Italian mafia into the United States. Now, the Italian mafia is a sub-government, a competing sub-government in the United States that was given full sanction to operate in the United States by the Roman Church. That's why they came out of Italy. And they were able to operate and to kill with impunity in the United States and to avoid prosecution because they were agents of the church. And the promoter of this was none other than Albert Pike, who you could see he was a member of the Arkansas Supreme Court, a senior officer of the Confederate States Army. He was a general, if I recall, commanding the District of Indian Territory and the Trans-Mississippi Theater, a prominent member of the Freemasons. Oh, that's the understatement of the year. Pike served as the sovereign grand commander of the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry from 1859 to 1889. He was a renowned Satanist. He was a top level, 33rd level Mason, and he wrote a letter concerning 3 world wars. The third one, supposedly being a war between Jews and Muslims, that is to come. And this was to be exacerbated and made as difficult as possible so that war would come. And I think we're very close to that war right now. And I think it's something interesting also that you said here, Lisa, that they don't know who's going to win and they don't care. Now, I think this is a true spiritual diagnosis of the leadership we have in this country. They want the war and they don't care who wins. They don't care. I mean, I don't perceive Joe Biden as caring one little bit about the United States. When you can have the single largest ecological disaster in U.S. history take place in East Palestine, Ohio, interesting name, single largest ecological disaster in American history, and the very day he should be in Ohio talking about federal relief for the families there, he instead flies to Kyiv, Ukraine, and commits to give another $10 billion to Vladimir Zelensky to further the slaughter of Ukrainian people in the war against Russia. It's absolutely outrageous. I mean, it's like I could care less,
But so who are
Go
they
ahead.
killing? They're obviously killing a specific bloodlines. They're after bloodlines. In every country, they're after the bloodlines. That's why they're targeting and Ohio, what happened in Ohio, that these are the signs of the times, but Elohim made that clear that they're targeting, and they have always been, right? And it's going to be the believer and the Jew.
Well, yeah, and I can tell you, they going after, when you're talking about the Ukrainians in Ukraine, most of those Ukrainians that are dying on the battlefield are not necessarily Slavic, but rather Germanic. Many of the Ukrainians that are dying in the field are Germanic, not Slavic. There's a high population of Germanic people in Ukraine, and they've been there for centuries, but nonetheless Germanic. Now, there are Slavic people there, and they were testing their bioweapons on Slavic people in nations like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Georgia, Azerbaijan, etc., in order to develop a gain of function that would be racially specific. That is to say, they could launch a bioweapon into Russia that would kill Slavic people in Russia. That was the idea, to kill Slavic people and not someone else. But when you're talking about what's going on there, I mean, the way I see it, just between us, and then Jesse, we want to take some questions from you or some comments, okay?
Mhm.
When the way I see it is that you have Biden intentionally exhausting all of the military resources of Europe in a piecemeal approach in Ukraine. In other words, we give you these weapons, not enough to win a battle, but we're going to continually give you these weapons until Poland's out of weapons, Estonia's out of weapons, Germany's out of weapons, France is out of weapons, Italy's out of weapons. Some people, like the Greeks, have figured it out, and the Greeks have said, we're not sending any more in because we're going to need them for our own battles. But the rest of Europe has not figured it out. And so the rest of the Europe is dumping all these arms. And for Boris Johnson to tell the British leadership, we need to take all of our armament, all of our aircraft, and all of our tanks and put them in Ukraine. Where does that leave Britain when they're all shot down and they're all blown up? It leaves Britain completely defenseless, completely defenseless. And currently, the situation is so bad right now. Britain says they have 2 days of ammunition if it came to a fight between them and Russia, 2 days. Germany said a month ago that they had 1 week of ammunition. The United States has said we can't replace our ammunition stocks for up to 7 years. It would take us to replace the javelins and so on and so forth. And they're trying to gear up to create, artillery shells at a rate of 40,000 a month, up from 17,000 a month, even though the rate of use by the Ukrainian army is about 20,000 a day. The Russians have bounced up to 1.7 million rounds a month in manufacturing. So we've got something going on that appears to be an intentional exhaustion of the military
Yes,
resources of the
absolutely.
West by the leadership. Okay, Jesse, what have you got here? You got things for us?
Yeah, okay. A lot of comments rather than questions. So going with all the talk so far, Rick H., Peter called Rome Babylon, and Washington, D.C. was built on the land formerly known as the Rome Maryland. Michael Smith, the second Exodus is coming this spring. We can see the trouble of David, the time of trouble starting, Daniel 12, verse 1. And Truth Unknown, the pentagram is just a star of Ishtar based on the pattern of Venus and Ishtar. So they're appreciating what you've brought so far, thanking you for bringing perspective into this, what's happening right now. Copperstone Farm, so the first transgender nation was Babylon. Going back to Lisa's talk, 9/11, let's not forget that also that is considered the real birth of Yahuah. So there was a connection to that with the 9/11 date. A few people have said that here. Jennifer Lane is asking, why did Syria and the Middle East for Israel? Oh, they're doing something for the Greater Israel Project. Do you know anything about that to add to that?
I do know something.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Well, let me fill in the background on it. There are many people who believe that there is what's called a Greater Israel Project because the land grant given to Abraham expresses a land all the way out to the Euphrates River, from the Nile to the Euphrates. And that would include all the way up to Turkey. And so there are people who believe, and I'm not sure that I'm one of them, who believe that the nation of Israel is attempting to expand its political borders all the way to the Euphrates River. Maybe. What do you know, Lisa? You live there.
I don't think so. I mean, but what do I know? You're talking about Masons, and they don't think they have a whole different mindset. So who knows what their plans are?
Okay, all right, fair enough. Okay, so yeah, and this is true. Greg Olson writes, Russia's arm factories are running 24/7. That's correct. They're in massive production. I mean, they're producing 200 advanced Armada tanks a month.
Can I share a mystery with you all about Russia, or actually Siberia? Is it Siberia in Russia?
Siberia is in Russia, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. When Elohim woke me and he was revealing everything to me, he revealed to me that Siberia is where they manufacture all the nuclear weapons for all the countries. That's what he told me.
It's going to be east of the Urals.
Yeah, that's east of the Urals is Siberia.
Yeah. Everything's east of the Urals.
Because he said the temperature and the safety, for the temperature and the safety. So see, they're all family and they're all ruling over their territory. These are their territories of their lineage, of their family, going back far longer than we've been here. So that's how it's playing out. But as far as their destruction of these government, all the weaponry and the governments, all the governments have to topple to have a new one out of the ashes, right? So they're all going to go. So is the royalty. They're going to make it seem like there's not going to be a royalty anymore. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting view. Now, John, I think what she's saying here is that the New World Order intends to destroy every single government on earth in this upcoming world war. Is that your take on it?
Yes.
It's funny you say that. It seems to be so, because like Lisa said, out of the ashes will rise the Antichrist and the false prophet and a new religion. And we're all gonna sing Kumbaya together, see? And
so here's the thing that's very important. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
That's okay.
You're interrupting me. Pardon my speaking while you're interrupting. Just hold for a second.
But I can see that. I can see that shaping up, because these people have created a situation that at least the West created it. I was over there. I watched it in southern Russia and in the Ukraine. I saw everything going on. So I know what happened in Kiev. The national government turned on the Russian citizens, the Russian ethnic citizens. I was in the Donbass. I saw firsthand somebody's not going to serve us because the people I was with were Russian. So we went to another restaurant. So that was petty. But anyway, so this has been forced on Russia, and they knew it. They've known it since the red flag came down, and we're preparing for this. They read the prophecies too. They know where Babylon is.
Yeah, they do.
And it's not in Iraq. I can tell you that.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
They know. They have all the documents from Constantinople. They are the Eastern Empire of the Roman Empire. And what you're seeing is an ongoing civil war between the Western Roman Empire, based in Rome, against who they hate, which is the Orthodox Eastern Empire. And it was the Eastern Empire that would not bow to the Bishop of Rome as being a preeminent bishop. It split the empire, split the church in down 1054. And then they got the Muslims to sack Constantinople. Before the Muslims sacked Constantinople, Venetian Republic hired a bunch of armies and went over and sacked it before the Muslims.
Yeah, that's right. What do they call it? 11th Crusade or something that they called it?
Yeah, a bunch of crusaders.
Yeah.
And that's when they got down to Cairo and got Mark's grave and brought it up, and he's buried under St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice. But this is a real war, physical war. It's a religious war, and then it's a spiritual war. But these are Nephilim children, because when we read Enoch, that's how they destroyed themselves. All of the children were fighting each other. Remember?
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is a multi-level, multi-dimensional kind of end of days coming upon us, and it's being orchestrated by none other than Yahweh.
Yeah, and
I'm going to do that.
And when you look at this, John, when you talk about Yah doing this, I used to look at these prophecies and think, well, this is horribly bad news. But it's not horribly bad news, because whereas the intention of these fallen ones that are governing the planet right now is to kill every single world leader to destroy every capital, to take down the population by 2/3, and then to rise like a phoenix of some kind of super elite that, if, like Lisa says, they have the capability to live 500 years because they have the Nephilim seed and not the human seed, then what are we looking at? Well, you can see that they intend to survive the cataclysm. That's
Well,
why a lot of the food in the United States that's off the shelves has been sequestered in the DUMBs, right? The deep underground military bases. That's where the food's going. It's off your shelf and down there. And they're telling you, oh, that food processing plant burned up, those chickens, we had to kill them. And all of that stuff ends up down in the DUMBs. And they intend to survive this thing. And when they survive it, there'll be only 1 billion people on Earth, and they'll be ruling over them.
well,
And those people will own nothing and be happy, right?
well, this is the delusion. This is the reprobate mind. What's behind this spiritually is this satanic creature, whatever that thing is. The war, the rebellion in the kingdom of Yah started with this rebellion among the angels leadership. That guy started it, and he's stuck here. It appears to me that he is stuck here, cannot get off. He's trapped, and he's going to kill everybody that he can do, the creation, everything. This is an insane angel, if you will, a psychopathic. I hate Yahweh. I want to put my throne above his. Listen to this guy talk. He's a nutcase. And now he's running around loose, and he's got in himself in all these governments through these children, if you will. And yeah, surely they are all behaving same fruit as this rabid angel. So
that's what's really alarming here, John, is that it's funny because when you look at wickedness doesn't have any creativity.
no, not at all.
It follows the same course century after century after century. It's the same wicked stuff in the same wicked way.
And we know him from the first time we see him in the garden. Did God really say? He's questioning God's word, the serpent and Eve, right there. And what was the problem with her? She was deceived, totally deceived. Where are we at now? Look at all this misinformation. Is that not deceptive?
She was listening to the wrong voice.
Yep, wrong voice, and it's the deceiver and the liar giving us misinformation. And now,
murderer, killer, steal, kill, and destroy. Hello.
Yeah. And now he's at a point where it's like, I'm going to tell you what the narrative is, and you people shut up. The rest of you shut up. I've got the floor here, and nobody else can talk. Well, take a look at this. This is the Matthew passage, right? Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, for inwardly they are ravening wolves. You shall know them by their fruits.
Hello.
Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? No. Even so, every good tree brings forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree brings forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that does not bring forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them. All right, well, let's take a look at the fruits. Okay, what are the fruits of the Satanists, the Masons, the Jesuits, the Baphomet worshipers, the Luciferians, and the secular humanists who rule over America? Let's take a look. I'm not saying this. This isn't my opinion. I'm just saying what Paul says is going to result from this. These are people professing themselves to be wise, and they became fools. They changed the glory of the incorruptible Elohim into an image made like corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore Elohim also gave them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of Elohim into a lie, and worshiped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause Elohim gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women changed the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error, which was meat. That's Romans 1:22 through 1:27. But how about 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 7? Know this also, that in the last days, boom, this is where we are, perilous times shall come. Are we in perilous times? Absolutely we are. We're on the brink of a third world war that's going to bring on a massive nuclear holocaust that could kill 2/3 of the world's population. Men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, that's full of lust, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers. That would describe the US government right now. Truce breakers, broken every truce ever signed. False accusers. Oh, you bet. Oh, these people are domestic terrorists. Why is that? They objected to us trying to talk their first grader into transgendered surgery. That makes them a domestic terrorist. Incontinent, they can't control themselves. Fierce, despisers of those that are good. They hate people who have been called out into righteousness. Hate them with a passion. It's down in their bone marrow. They drool with contempt. Traitors. Oh, do we have traitors in the US government? Are you kidding me? Heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of Elohim. And now this is a big deal. Lovers of pleasure more than lovers of Elohim. Oh, I've got my stuff. I don't care about the other people who don't have their stuff. I've got my stuff. So I'm going to expand my empire, drive my fancy car over their roads, and exercise my pleasures at the expense of others.
Can I interrupt you quick for 1 second?
Sure.
May I?
Go ahead.
Okay, just about that, what you're saying right now. We have to have a sensitive heart though towards these people, because you know what? It's the fallen angels have corrupted us. We were that way before we outgrew it. We were children, right? We saw dimly, now we see face to face. Now we're understanding. But those that are not there yet, that are stuck in that they're stuck in that place and they're lost and they need us. And we have to still remember that even though they're walking that way, there's still hope for them. There's still hope. I just wanted to get that.
Oh, yeah. Amen. Amen. I mean, I agree with that. And that's a very good expression right there. That's the true expression for the believer, is to have a heart for these people. But let me finish what Paul is saying here. Having a form of holiness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women who are laden with sins and led away with diverse lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Well, in the immortal words of Pilate, "Što jest istina?" What is truth, right? That's always the question. All right. So.
I love when you speak Russian.
You don't speak Russian?
No, I said I love when you speak Russian.
Well, thank you, Lisa. John is also a Russian speaker, so I think he's got an edge on me. He knows 6 words, while I only know 2.
That's my mom, my grandma's side of the family was from Russia, from Odessa. So I wish I could speak it.
Ukraini. Odessa is Ukraine. Ukraine. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, anyway, thus says Yahuah, behold, I will raise up against Babel and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me, a destroying wind. Now, like I say, I used to think this was bad news, but it's not bad news, because whereas these satanic minions want to kill almost everybody on earth and destroy all governments on earth, Yah is going to raise up a destroying wind that's going to go right after the leadership, which is Babel. and will send unto Babel fanners that shall fan her and shall empty her land. For in the day of evil they shall be against her all around about. Against him that bends, let the archer bend his bow. And against him that lifts himself up in his brigandine, that's a coat of mail, and spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her host, all her army. Thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Kasdim, and they that are thrust through in her streets. For Yasharel has not been forsaken, nor Yahudah of his Elohim, of Yahuah Sebaot, though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Yasharel. Now, this is an extremely important point. That when you see Yasharel is not forsaken, even in Babylon, even if you're living in Babylon, Yasharel is not forsaken, nor is Yahudah forsaken of his Elohim, of Yahuah Sebaot, because even though the land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Yasharel. See that? Now, I want to share this with you while we're here, because you see this discussion about the land of the Kasdim. All right. Now, in a lot of people's Bibles, King James and so forth, this is called the land of the Chaldeans. And it's spelled like this. Say Chaldeans. But it's pronounced Chaldeans. And truly the original Ivrit is Kasdim. But these Chaldeans, they would become known as Chaldeans, Chalti. And ultimately, Kelti and finally, Celtic. So the land of the Kasdim is not Assyria, it's not Turkey, it's not Babylon. The land of the Kasdim is where the Celtic people moved, and the Celtic people moved into Central Europe. So you're talking about the land of the Kasdim, you're talking about an area that goes probably all the way to Alsace-Lorraine in France, and then across Germany, the Netherlands, Poland, the Czechia, Slovakia, Romania, Hungary, and into Ukraine and into Belarus. That whole area right there, that is the land of the Kasdim. Okay? The slain shall fall in the land of the Kasdim. So where is this battle going to take place between the armies? Where is this battle going to take place? The battle is going to take place most likely. It's going to be, predominantly, it's going to be in Poland and Romania. That's where most of this direct, hand-to-hand, face-to-face combat, tank on tank, troop on troop, etc., in the land of the Kasdim is where that's going to take place. But of course, that's not the only judgment here, right? Because we can see, flee out of the midst of Babel and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. For this is the time of Yahuah's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. Now, this is extremely important. We're going to be talking about this. Jesse and I are going to be talking about this more and more on eating wild honey and locusts as we talk about how to come out of Babylon. And I think I may have a new theory on this, Jesse, if you want to know the truth of it, using the common law and international standards to create the one new man. Babel has been a golden cup in Yahuah's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. Now, this is something that John was saying earlier. This psychopath that is behind this machination on earth, he's mad. And Babel has made the potion that Babel has poured is making the nations mad. Babel is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain. If it's so, she may be healed. We would have healed Babel, but she is not healed. Forsake her. Let us go, everyone into his own country. Get out of Dodge. For her judgment reaches unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. Yahuah has brought forth our righteousness. Come and let us declare in Zion the work of Yahuah Eloheinu.
Amen.
So we see the spiritual side of this here. The spiritual side of this is really quite acute, because we see you want to deliver every man his own soul. Okay? So don't be cut off in her iniquity, right? So what you want to do is let everyone go into his own country, where judgment reaches up to heaven, right? Let us declare in Zion. Now, Zion is a place of salvation, not necessarily a mountaintop, but rather a place of guidance and salvation. Let us declare in Yah's place of guidance the work of Yahuah Elohim. So this is possible to do without necessarily leaving the country. You're going to leave it spiritually, okay? And there came one of the seven angels. We've been talking about this in Ancient Days class over at Sefer Academy, who the seven angels are, which had the seven vials, and talked with me saying, come hither. I will show you the judgment of the great whore that sits upon many waters. Okay, that's a very, very important catchphrase. The great whore sits upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. That is to say, the fruit of her fornication, right? Her wealth that's been generated by this. So he carried me away in the ruach into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, take a look at this when we see what fornication is, okay? Fornication is the Greek word porneu, which means to act the harlot, to indulge in unlawful lust, or to practice idolatry. Well, you know, I see this when you start talking about fornication, I see this as the practice of fornication really had to do with the fake petrodollar. This was really an act of fornication because it was not lawful. It was not a lawful trade. It was a cheating trade. It was like showing up with monopoly money and talking everybody in the world into accepting it. That's what it was. And we talked everybody into accepting it for 50 years. But those days are over. Now, Jesse, what have you got on this? Any comments or any kind of feedback coming in?
Dirt dabber. I always like to say dirt buster. It's dirt dabber. The elect children come out of the wickedness, but not to be part of the Babylonian system. So it's very much talk like that at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this idea of coming out of the system, coming out of Babylon, and coming out of that iniquity. You know, when we talk about coming out of that iniquity is, you know, it's a mindset, right? Well, I'm going along with the flow. I'm part of the pop culture. I'm part of the mainstream. I do the things the way everybody else expects me to do them. I wear the clothes they want me to wear. I talk the way they want me to talk. I, you know, accept the values that they accept, this kind of thing. You know, you become very quickly part of Babylon, and you begin to share in Babylon's iniquity. When? Well, let's look at the next slide and we'll see. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand. See the golden cup. Remember what Jeremiah said? That she is a golden cup in his hand. Abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babel the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the Kodashim, the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Yahushua. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. All right, now take a look at this. We're going to look at the word abomination in the Ivrit. And this word is toeba. Toeba. Now, toeba, you can do this if you just do a simple word search with toeba against your Tanakh. You can find what is abomination, because Yah tells you this is a toeba, this is abomination. So here they are, right? Okay, incest, Leviticus 18:6 through 19. Adultery, Leviticus 18 through 20. Passing children through to Molech, Leviticus 18:21. Sodomy, Leviticus 18:22. Bestiality, Leviticus 18:23. Worshiping graven images, Deuteronomy 7:25. Eating abominable things, Deuteronomy 14:3. Offering offerings, Deuteronomy 17:1. Women dressing as men and men dressing as women, Deuteronomy 22:5. Offering the wages of a prostitute in the temple, Deuteronomy 23:18. Remarrying an ex, Deuteronomy 24:4. And making a graven or moltage image, Deuteronomy 27:15. Okay, these are the abominations. Well, let's see. Let's find out, does America have any of these going on? Well, let's see.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
adultery. Yeah, you can't get divorced for that anymore. Passing children through to Moloch, passing children through to angels. Yeah. Sodomy. Oh, yeah, that's a protected class. Bestiality. Yeah, that's been legalized. Worshiping graven images. Well, that's,
Whatever.
That's art, photography, movies, everything.
yeah, it's in everything. Eating abominable things. Are you kidding? Then now they want us to eat bugs. Offering blemished offerings. This is something that goes on. Women dressing as men, check. Men dressing as women. Well, that's now a protected class, considered an abomination. Offering the wages of a prostitute. Well, if you're a prostitute and you're trying to get away with it at church, you're making an offering of a prostitute. Remarry an ex. I suppose that's going on. I'm not going to necessarily check it. Making a graven image or molten image, of course. So all of this describes the current condition of the social order in America, and it's all without anybody saying a thing about it. Oh, that's okay. That's being diversity. That's showing love, is to allow this kind of love. To allow abominations is to show love and caring, because we're caring people. We want to make sure that we care and love these people who are engaged in this kind of behavior. And people who say that that's sinful, well, we're not loving them at all. We hate their guts and want to see them dead. And anybody who opens their mouth against our love for all these abominations needs to go to prison.
There's somewhere in Paul's letters, somewhere in Paul's letters, he talks about people that do abominations are, an abomination unto themselves, I guess. But then he refers to people that don't participate in it, but approve of it. And that they will be judged as if they had participated. This is terrifying to me. But, it says it. It just says that. And other thing about this woman on this beast, it has mystery babble. To me, this is the personification of every religion. Religion is not of God. Religion is of men. Right? God didn't create religion. Man did that to simulate or make us feel good that we're in charge.
I concur. You have my vote.
Yeah, well, all religions, there's only one truth. That's what we see in the scriptures. And everybody else has cherry-picked the scriptures and in the Christian world and in the Jewish world and found their niche to follow this group of scriptures and that group. We call those denominations. But this woman and what she's called is the harlot and the abominations. That cup, she was handed that cup by Yahweh. Here, drink this. The iniquities of the Amorites the cup of their abominations was not yet full. That's part of the reason they went into the desert for 40 years to get a new nation of nomadic warriors who had no memory of Egypt would take that land from the Amalekite, from all those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
here is a picture, and the key is it goes back to the religions of Babylon. It starts there with Semiramis and Nimrod and the Tower of Babel and all this kind of stuff. See, so all of our religions, I'm not knocking religion. I was in religion. That's where I learned about Yahweh, Bible stories. So they have a purpose. Everything that Yah has put on the earth, good and evil, has a purpose that is serving him in the end. So
And that's the come out of her, my people.
yeah, and look at us. I can't go to a church.
I can't go to church or temple. I couldn't as a kid.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
I've somehow graduated. I'm looking for, to what Jeremiah, Yah writes in Jeremiah 9, chapter 9:24. I love this. He says, glorify in this, that you know and understand me. It's a short verse, and then Yahuah almost quotes it or paraphrases it in John 17:3 as the definition of eternal life. That you know the one real Elohim.
And the Son whom he
And
sent.
the Son that he sent.
Yeah,
Period.
amen.
Now,
Amen.
what are we studying when we go into church? Studying a doctrine. And if you bring up a scripture that doesn't fit in, they don't talk about that. See, and that's not bad, because people have to get that to get tired of eating that and go somewhere else because they're looking for it. So anyway, this is great. Look up, because your redemption is near.
Look up, your redemption is near. That's the truth of it. Okay, and so Revelation continues. After these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babel the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils. Now, so we talk about Babylon falling. This is not Babylon being destroyed. This is Babylon falling. Okay, there's a difference. Babylon is fallen. Babylon wasn't this place before, but now what is it? What is it now that it's fallen? Well, it's a habitation of devils. It's the hold of every foul ruach. It's a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. This is what Babylon has become. You see, Babylon wasn't this way before, but now that it's fallen, this is what its condition is. It's full of devils, every foul ruach, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Now, what do you know about this, Lisa? Tell us about it.
Do you have a few years? Where do I begin? Oh my goodness. Well, I believe
background.
truly. What? You broke
Give
up.
us some background. Tell us what you know. Tell us what you've seen.
Okay, so I believe that, so we go back to the spiritual and the physical connotation of Babylon. There's a physical place and there's a spiritual indwelling in the spirit of Babylon. So Babylon being the corruption by fallen angels to their offspring, and their offspring wanting to totally decimate Elohim's creation and make them do things that are unimaginable, and do it through what? A worldly material, how they did it. I mean, it's when you look back on the materialism, it's such how they manipulated that human beings was a greed and they taught that. So the angels came and they taught them all these things that they knew, their knowledge, their wisdom, and passed it on to the people, and then made them lust for creating man-made things. So all throughout history now, I had a vision of this today, and so it ties into this, of, Little House on the Prairie, and we'll use that as an example. Or that was like the typical, in this new garden that he's put us in, that would have been the most beautiful scenario for a family, is to have land, raise their animals, love one another, share, good memories, live a wholesome life. That was the life he had for us. Then these creatures come along and say, no, we're gonna control everything and make you pay for to live on that land, and we're gonna charge you and everything. Now we're slaves, and we've become slaves, and we're taught to pursue materialism and to invent and to create material things. And everyone thinks that is the measure of a man, what you can create in the world, but that's not the measure of a man. What you can create that Elohim gave you is the gift of life and family and your friends and your loved ones, not a car or a vehicle to get you somewhere. I mean, yeah, it's nice to be able to travel if you have family or friends somewhere else, but those aren't the things that make a man. At the end of a man's life, whoever's with him, when his family is surrounding him and he's loved and he's cherished, that's the measure of a man. Unless you're dying alone in one of their skilled nursing facilities, which is their goal for you, to take your life and drug you up in a hospice so that you can't repent because you're too drugged up to know. You can't know that last breath in and that last exhale is your moment. And if you don't know it's coming, and you can't be awake enough to know it's coming to repent, or have the wherewithal in your heart and your spirit to repent, they've got you. And they know it. So they've set up their system, their Babylonian, this is part of their Babylonian system. The whole hospital system. When I was dying, Elohim said, I never wanted this for any of you. I never planned for any of this for any of you. I created disease so that if it was time for you to come home, you would come home within a matter of days and you wouldn't suffer. But Satan wanted you to suffer and separate you from me, and building his hospitals on burial grounds everywhere by the Shriners. So they've really infiltrated everything, and it's so they have all their demonic spirits that have left, and that they consult with and get all their information with. So they're these creatures, these fallen angels and their offspring. They have nothing more to do with life than to create wickedness. That's all they're here for, is to create more wickedness for our human condition. So, but I have a little hope in that, because Elohim it's something I've been wanting to share with everyone, that Elohim put on my heart to share, was I know that in the world right now, we're witnessing this huge push on every media channel, in like the knowledge that's increasing is such negative. It's overwhelming news in everything, all the truthers, and we're all the spiritual people that want to help are trying to get information out there to everyone to lift them up to be able to stand and get through it. But it's like walking through the thicket. We're like, everywhere we turn, we are in the den of thieves. We're stepping on those adders and scorpions for sure. And so I wanted to say, don't listen to the things that men say. I mean, please pray, but don't, just because it's out there in the media or it's on the news and they're telling you all these royals and politicians and people that are paid, they're all paid to do what they're doing. They're all in on it. They're all ready to go. And it's one big show, and it's a script, and they're playing it to the end, even to their very names. They're all named for their part. And it's meant to, these fallen angels and their offspring feed off the negative energy of Elohim's people. They live for it. That's why when I was in front of that TV set at 9 months old, asking Elohim, why is everybody crying? It was when JFK died. And I couldn't understand it. And he never answered the question until I was 52. So when I was dying, it was provocative. So I said, okay, well, he revealed to me that they feed off that energy, and that's how they profit. They profit off it too. And so they make their memorabilia, they'll take someone out who isn't dead. They're on an island somewhere and enjoying the rest of their life. And they take them out, and then they sell everything, every abominable thing, every idol worship thing that you could buy. I'm sure everyone has memorabilia in their house. I say get rid of it. And I wanted to say about this common law, because I've known about it since 2010. And when he woke me, and for some reason, Elohim always led me away. Like I tried to file, I bought all the package and everything. I was going to do the whole common law and get rid of my straw man situation. But Elohim said, no, he said, don't, it's their system. It's their demonic system. And it's only going to enslave those who do it further, thinking that they're free. They may be the first that they go after, because they think that you think you figured it out, but he would never allow me to do it. He would not. He said, look, better to suffer wrong and you're already separated from him. We are all separated from the enemy because we have Elohim. So why go back and do something more to be further into their system? Because they're such deceivers anyway. There's no way to get out of that. Be what you were born into, because that's your birthright. That's your birthright. How he brought you into the world is your true birthright. Forget about their corruption in the world. That has nothing to do with us. That has to do with them and what their recompense is going to be. But for us, I warn everyone, don't do it. He told me not to do it straight up. I mean, we could do it, right? And we're entitled to a lot of money, by the way. I've done the research on that, significant research. We're entitled to all that money for the rest of our life if we wanted to have it. But he said that's even a further snare into their system. And he just, every time I went to do it, something would happen that I couldn't get it done. And then I lost all the paperwork when I left to Israel. I left everything in storage, so I had nothing. So, and he said, no, I don't want you to ever do it. So that's
all right.
pretty
Well,
profound.
good word, Lisa. All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that commentary. Thank you. Let's
You're
continue,
welcome.
because there's something I want to show you here in this passage in Revelation, right? So we see here, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Now, this is something you were just mentioning. We're going to talk about this. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Now, so what you're talking about here, you're talking about this idea of materialism and the fact that we've had taken away from us a natural life. You mentioned Little House on the Prairie, and this is so true. I mean, we talk about the natural life. For instance, there are people that will tell you that you absolutely must, in your lifetime, take your shoes and socks off and step outside on the ground, because you have to be grounded. You have to have all this static electricity that's in your body has to come running out, and it has to go to ground at some point. This is why I'll tell you, when we were in Florida, man, it's very difficult to run barefoot in Alaska in January. I can tell you that right now. We were out in it today. I mean, I looked at Stephanie this morning. We looked out in the front yard, and I said, you know what? We're not quite full. She says, what do you mean? I said, well, if you look over here at the 6-foot fence, we don't have snow all the way to the top yet. Looks like we're going to need some more, because we got another 10 inches today, right? But anyway, we went out hoofing in the snow. But, when we had the opportunity when we were in Florida to walk on the beach barefooted, man, we took it, because it was the chance to ground yourself, and the idea of this natural life, a natural walk in Yah, which is a very simple provision, but it's simple and beautiful and joyous, that, we grow the food that we grow. We live on the land. We live in accordance with the land. We live in the rhythm of the natural calendar, of this idea of the rotating moon through a month cycle, and the annual cycle of the sun, and the harvest cycle, and the growing cycle, and the crop cycle. And here in Alaska, the fish cycle. We become one with the fish when they start running. This is the truth.
So,
But the point being is that the cycles of Yah are a beautiful thing. And to live in those cycles, to live within those cycles is such a spectacular and wonderful thing to do. But then we're told all this arbitrary and capricious stuff, like when you look, for instance, at the intersection of Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, right? Or maybe it's Utah, but I think it's Nevada. You have what's called the Four Corners. Well, how do you get the Four Corners? Well, a guy took it. Here's this beautiful natural territory in the United States, and some cartographer took out a ruler and went, there you go. That's now political division. It's the same thing with the line that separates Iraq from Jordan and Jordan from Israel. The Iraq from Jordan, it's obviously, and Kuwait, it's obviously drawn with a ruler. Same thing with Syria. It was drawn with a ruler. No regard for the people that live there whatsoever. Just put a ruler down on the paper and draw it and say, this is the political control. And you get the same thing when you're talking about, the indigenous people, the First Nations in America, in North America. They had a completely different understanding of the land and the rhythm of life and so on and so forth. And there were not these boundaries. There were not fences up. There were not surveyed lines. And when somebody says, I'm going to survey this and put my fence up to exclude you or someone else from the natural setting, whether or not I ever use it, right? It does become an arbitrary and capricious kind of thing. And our life is taken away from us, criminalized, and the life they want us to live is then licensed so that we can go live it.
So we can serve them and their lifestyle.
Yeah,
Right.
and their wealth. Jesse, have you got something you want to add on this, sister?
Yeah, no, that's a very important point. I see it from where these things come from. But we also, like you said, we need to understand what we're being licensed for and stand up against that. That's highly important, that we understand that part of the system. So it's more than just the straw man. It's in every area of our life, because that's what it means to come out of Babylon. When I'm looking at these comments from people, it's things like, this really affects us. What happens if we need to have emergency treatment and there's stipulations put on us? It is things like that practically. Other people here saying even blood tests and things like that. There is a moral aspect to this. How far do you go with this? So it really is important, because now, like never before, we're being asked to consider these things. It's more than just a matter of conscience. It really is being that unique people of the heart and knowing how to walk and standing with that conviction. But it also means that you stand alone in this. But it's hard to survive in this way. So, I can just see the people here, and they're representative of so many, saying we need to know how to walk this out, how to process this. So it's knowing the word and knowing that aspect of common law and how to work it out, which I think is really important. There's something, this is global for those that are a remnant, set apart. This is where their mind is, where they're thinking at this time, in place of everything that we are economically worldwide. This is going to affect us personally. So, looking at it from that point of view.
Well, if you look at, for instance, the Amish or the Mennonites, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Amish are, they're pretty proliferated around America. And where the Sefer Publishing Group is, it's in the middle of an Amish community. And so the Amish are, routinely driving their buggies through the area with, horse-drawn. And, they're not hooked up to the electric grid. They're not hooked up to the internet. And so you see that the Amish have come out of her, and the Mennonites, the same, they come out of her. And as a result, the Amish say, well, look, we don't do insurance, and we don't do medical insurance. We don't do any of that. We just don't do that system. We do our stuff, and we don't do your stuff. And as a consequence, when Obama came in and imposed Obamacare, he said, look, this is going to be applicable to everyone except those people who have had a religious conviction that precedes 1959, saying that you don't do insurance. So you can't just create a religion today and say, we don't believe in insurance. You have to have been doing it since before 1959. And there were only two groups in America that applied: Islam, Muslims, and the Amish.
Interesting.
Because the Amish had already come out of her, they weren't going to be part of of the sanctioning system that was Obamacare. Now, I'm not sitting here jumping up and down about the Amish and saying everybody should become Amish, but you can see that some people who came out, and this is what the Pilgrims did when they came out of Britain. You know, they came out, they said, look, we have to get out of Europe, because even though there was a Protestant revolution in Britain, the Anglican Church did not move far enough away from the Roman Church to be scripturally accurate. So we're moving out of here. We're going away. And I think this is a big part of when we talk about coming out of Babylon. Now, I agree with Lisa that a lot of the sovereign citizen stuff is gobbledygook. Okay,
Yeah.
it's gobbledygook, and it's very dangerous stuff. And you're right. You know, you might as well paint a target on your back. But
They're
there
going to put
is,
you in jail. They put those people in jail too if you file wrong. So you have to deal with that. If you don't know what you're doing, they'll put you in jail. People have been arrested that are now teaching people how to do this.
right.
I mean, I know
right,
people who've
that's
done
right.
it, and they've done it and they've come out of it and they've gotten money. But
But I can tell you the idea of getting money. First of all, I'm not interested in getting any money that somebody else is holding.
right.
Because the fiat system is an absolute joke, and I'm not interested in any of that. The thing that I'm interested in, the thing that I'm the most interested in is being spiritually out of Babylon.
Mm.
That's the thing that
But
I'm the
you are
most.
already. You are already.
Well,
You're
you know, I don't
completely
want.
out of Babylon.
Thank
You know,
you.
it's like when you say, "Look, I'm completely out of the pool, but I'm still soaking wet."
But you're not
right?
out of Babylon, physical Babylon. And you have to come out of her. And this is the
Yeah, yeah.
warning he gave me. And I know no one wants to hear it in USA. And I tell you, he sent me. So I had the nightmare when I was 3 of the wall of snakes chasing me. I knew that coming to this country was the den of vipers, that the snakes chasing me. I knew that I was coming to something that was heavy, and it was not, there was so much going on here, but his children are here that he loves, that are just like his children in America and all these other countries. But this is his land. He said, this is his land, and this is our inheritance. And so he told me, he said, I need you to go to Israel, but it's the safest place on the planet for what's coming, for what he's sending, because America's going to be split in 2. And they know that.
Okay,
And if
all right,
they-
now stop there, Lisa. Stop there, because let's get through some of these prophecies, and then we can
Okay.
talk specifically about this. Okay. So here, going back to Revelation 18:4-8. Okay, come out of my people. Her sins have reached unto heaven, and Elohim has remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she has rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. In the cup which she has filled, fill to her double. How much she has glorified herself. And when you're talking about America, come on. How much she has glorified herself. Live deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she says in her heart, I sit as a queen, and I am no widow, and I shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death, mourning, famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is Yahuah Elohim who judges her. Continuing on, because we're going to find out here in this passage who Babylon is, okay? And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, the great city, Babel, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment did come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buys their merchandise anymore. For in 1 hour so great riches has come to nothing. And every shipmaster and all the company in the ships and the sailors and as many trade by sea stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein we were made rich, and all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour she is made desolate. Now, listen to this. Rejoice over her, you heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for Elohim has avenged you on her. And a mighty angel took up a stone, like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babel be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. With violence. It's not going to decay. It's not going to rot. It's not going to fall off the hoof because of plague. It's not going to become desolate over a period of time. With violence, it shall be thrown down. And the voice of harpers, musicians, pipers, trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in you at all. No craftsman of whatever craft he be shall be found any more in you. And the sound of a millstone shall never be heard any more at all in you. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in you. And the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in you. For your merchants were the great men of the earth. For by your sorceries were all nations deceived.
Mm.
And in her was found the blood of prophets and the Kodashim and all that were slain upon the earth. Now, who is Babylon? Babylon is the one who deceived all nations with her sorceries. Okay. Guess what the word sorcery is? Pharmakia. Pharmakia. For by your pharmakia, all the nations of the earth were deceived. Who's Babylon? Babylon is the place that has the pharmakia that deceived all the nations of the earth. Who's Babylon? Babylon is the nation that deceived all nations with sorceries, which in the Greek is pharmakia. That is to say, the nation that has all the pharmakias is the nation that is deceiving the whole world and is the nation that is Babel. That's who it's talking about, that nation. That nation is the nation that's Babylon. Now, if that's the nation that is Babylon and they deceived all nations, when was the whole earth deceived by pharmaceuticals before 2020? Never happened. You might have talked a lot of the nations in Europe into a smallpox vaccine. You might have talked some of the nations in Africa into a vaccine. You might have occasionally talked to people in India into it. But did you talk every single nation on earth into a pandemic? Did you? No, that never happened before 2020. Did the whole earth lock down before predicated upon your sorcery? No. Everybody on earth become required to take your products, your pharmakia, before 2020? No, no, no. We've had one worldwide event, historical event in the history of mankind that affected every single nation on earth, and it was the sorcery of pharmakia, which deceived the whole world, which everybody is now waking up to and admitting. Well, let's see who the top. Let's see who the top 10 pharmaceuticals are. Where are they? Well, let's see. There's Johnson & Johnson. They're in the USA. There's Pfizer. They're in the USA. There's Roche. They're in the USA. There's Abbott Labs. They're in the USA. Novartis. That's in Switzerland. Okay. Merck. That's USA. Bristol Myers Squibb. That's USA. GlaxoSmithKline. That's UK. Sanofi. That's USA. And AstraZeneca. That's UK.
Yeah.
So let me ask you the critical question here. Let me ask the question. Who is Babel? And the serpent head is right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see it?
Mm.
Babylon. It's clear. The evidence is right there. So we return to Jeremiah, and then we can get some of your feedback on this, Lisa. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. Yahuah has raised up the ruach of the kings of Madai. Now, you guys might recall that there was an empire that overtook Babylon in the book of Daniel. Anybody remember the name of that kingdom?
Medo-Persian.
Medo-Persian, right?
Yeah, Darius and Cyrus.
Now, the Medo-Persian Empire was made up of two groups of people, the Medes and the Persians.
Mm,
And who, pray tell, were the Medes? They were the children of Madai. Yahuah has raised up the ruach of the kings of Madai, and the devices against Babel to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of Yahuah, the vengeance of his temple. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babel, and make the watch strong, and set up the watchmen, prepare the ambushes. Prepare the ambushes. For Yahuah has both devised and done at that which he spoke against the inhabitants of Babel, O you that dwell upon many waters. Did Babylon ever dwell upon many waters? Never. Babylon itself, the one that's in Iraq, never dwelt upon many waters. It dwelt upon one river, and then if you got lucky, you could get down to the Persian Gulf. That's not many waters. Not compared to having the coastline that occupies the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, the Bering Sea, and the Arctic Ocean that we have in America. That's many waters. And abundant in treasure. Your end is come. Okay, now, Lisa, talk to us about
Yes.
Iran and the United States.
Okay, so you heard this before, that Elohim gave, I'm having reverberation. I don't know. Do you hear it? Are you
okay.
hearing me okay? Okay.
We're not hearing it.
Okay, so Elohim, when I was dying in 2015, the first night, one of the first things that he said, of the many things that he told me that night and revealed to me, was that Iran would be the one. And first he explained the war was coming and why he was waking me, of course. And then he explained the war and all the things that they were going to do until that point in time. And he said Iran was going to send a nuclear weapon. Iran was going to release a nuclear weapon in 2024. Now, this was 2015. So I've repeatedly asked him, with all the rumors of wars, every time there is one, because everybody's saying, no, we're going to go to war, we're going to have a nuclear war, it's going to happen this, we're hearing it all the time now. It's all, for me, I just say, should I listen? Is any of this true? Has anything changed? No, nothing has changed. So he revealed to me a lot about what's happening right now with regard to what we're seeing, but I can explain it in a way that will help everyone understand, because I've been in the computer industry in accounting. So I understand networking and what has to happen for them to complete their plan to go digital. So everybody can relax for probably till the war is over. Elohim showed me why. And why is because they're not going to give the mandatory injections to everyone. They're not going to go through all that work to give mandatory injections to put everyone online if they're planning to take a lot of people out of the picture. That's a huge waste of their energy and their resources. And I don't think they love their money too much. I don't think they want to spend it on that. They'd want to spend it on a new home or a new war. You know what I mean? So that's not coming. I mean, they have to take down every industry, and they have to take it offline and put it up, have it up and running on their new system. And to do that is so intensive that they're not ready. As far as people saying, oh, we're going to go digital this year, it's going to happen. No, it's not even close. It's not even close. So I can explain it to you like this. So in 1998, my doctor said to me, oh, I have to have all my medical records online by 2000. And I said, why? And he said, I don't know. It's the government's mandating that we have to have all our medical records online. So now, just so everyone knows, your medical records are online. You and your medical history is available to every country. So no matter where you travel in the world, it's online. done. That industry is down. The medical industry, that's how they were able to do what they did in 2020. They had 20 years of perfecting it. That's a long time to just get one industry down. So they've got to do that with food. They have to have, when they do their reset, and the reason they're talking about it all the time is to get everybody so fearful, and because they live and feed off of that negative energy, that where everyone starts getting upset and they have no hope. And that's these creatures, that's what they feed off of. That's what they live on. So they just put it out there all the time. They've been doing it. We've been hearing the New World Order since, I think, back in Kissinger's day. And, and Bush and all, all throughout, they've all been talking about the New World Order. We're in their New World Order system. We're just not, it's not perfected. Their capstone is going to be taking out Washington. So that's going to be a sign. But Iran is going to be the one to send the nuke. So there's not going to, if there's a nuclear war in USA, or if there's nuclear anything coming to USA, it's not coming before 2024. It's not coming before Trump comes back, because Elohim made certain to let me know. And he told me 2 years ahead of time, America will be hit for, America will be first in this war. America will be hit first. And then 2 years later, Trump comes out and says, America first at 9/11. And that was in his inauguration speech. And he's chanting his curse on the American people, telling them in plain sight in his inauguration speech, their plans for America. America's first in this war. So what is first? Well, they bought those injections on May 1st, 2020, which we talked about this in 2019, you and I, what was coming in 2020. I knew the lockdowns were coming in 2015. I didn't know what it was going to be. I told my dad, they're going to lock everyone down. No one's going to be able to fly or travel. He said, what are you talking about? That's never been, you're crazy. He thought I was crazy because, he's just, he watched me almost die. So he thinks that I'm just kind of losing my mind a little bit. But I didn't know what it was going to be. I said, Dad, it's going to be something just really stupid, like absolutely so blatantly stupid, and people are going to go for it. I didn't know what it was going to be. I had no idea it's going to be a vaccination, or it's going to be any medical whatever, nothing. But 2020 was, May 1st, 2020 was a very significant day. It's May Day, first of all. And Trump was like totally mocking everyone in when he said, oh, I think, so this was when I knew we were going to be locked down for certain, even though Elohim had given me a vision of it in 2020, in March, after they did their event 201, Trump came out and he said, we're going to be locked down for a little while. And we got locked down. And then he said, oh, everybody will be able to fly by April 1st. And I turned to my father and I said, Dad, that's April Fool's Day. We're not going to be out of this. This is it. They're going to lock us down. This is the year. They're locking us down. They're going to fulfill whatever it is they've been wanting to fulfill this year. And sure enough, that year they brought out, at the end of the year, I think of 2020, they brought out the injection. But on May 1st, 2020, he bought those. He signed into law with Bill Gates the 480 million injections. And then you and I discussed that. I talked to you one day and I said, well, there's only 330 million people in the USA. Who are the other 150 million for? And then you said, well, that would be Canada and Mexico. And then now it makes sense, because what just happened? The North American Alliance? Is that what it's called? North American United North
American Union, NAU.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So the vision of this, what's going to happen and how it's going to play, is after this whole, it's going to be when Trump comes back. And I think it's going to fall in line with the timing, with that date that he brought up. I'm going to tell you why. There's so many things that happened on November 29th, including Wuhan University being founded in like 1860. I just saw that today before coming on the show. So Wuhan University was founded on November 29th, 1863. In the early 1900s, I don't remember what year, I can't remember the year, but it was November 29th. The United Nations, so it had to be in the 40s, right? United Nations tried to separate Palestine and Israel. They've filled out a treaty on November 29th, and it never happened. So their plans have been foiled, and they keep getting foiled. Well, the next thing that's going to foil their plans is the planet that's approaching, because he said one's man-made and one he's sending, and it will be coming from behind the sun. So that means that the Pacific is going to, you guys are going to see it first. But what he revealed to me in a vision of it when it comes was USA being split in two from underground. So he showed me the core of the earth opening up and destroying everything right down the middle, parting USA, totally just right down the middle, USA separated. Now, can you imagine what would happen with that? That's going to cause an earthquake and all kinds of calamity and craziness everywhere. So when I left, he told me, and he parked me on that street for a reason. And that end of that street that I was parked on, that house, the two houses that he gifted me when I got here in Israel, which is in my testimony, we'll talk about some other day, but was Revelation 13:7 and Revelation 14:7, those two significant days, two significant revelations. And he said, this is where we are. This is where we are in judgment, in the harvest, and what's coming. And that's how I knew May 1st, 2020, also because of some other things. But they can't fulfill their mandatory plans until the one who's going to carry that out is on the scene. And Elohim clearly said Trump would serve 8 years and Biden would bide in. So Trump would Biden to his name, bide in. Okay, so they're very in plain sight, and sometimes we miss these things. Like the latest one is, I think, dioxin in Ohio.
Dioxin, right? Yeah, dioxin. Yeah.
And COVID or Corona, your crown. So they're telling you this is your crown. They're telling you, they're deceiving. They do it in one word or maybe an accent over something, their semantics that they love so much, but they let everyone know. And if you research it and you look it up, you're going to find, oh, okay, so they've told us what their plans are to a degree. Well,
this is interesting, Lisa. So let's go back for just a second, because you put a bunch of things on the table here that are kind of interesting. One is that you're talking about Planet X or Nibiru, or however you want to put it, or as Gil Broussard would call it, Planet 7X. And so you're saying you've had a vision that confirms the existence of this thing.
No, he told me outright, and he told me what he was sending, and he told me why, and he gave me a vision and he spoke it to me. When he gives me a vision, just so everyone knows, because they don't know my testimony, all my life from the time I was an infant, any vision that he gives to me of something coming comes. The way he says it's going to come, I don't even think about it anymore. I move on to the next thing, and I actually sometimes forget the visions until it comes, and then in hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, he let me know that ahead of time, and I forgot, because there's just so many.
Let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about the planet. So how big is this planet? Is it huge?
Well, the way that he revealed it to me, it's probably like 10 times the size of Earth. Okay. I can only tell you in perspective of 10 times the size of the sun. Like what we see as the sun, just, how the only best way I can describe it is if you've ever seen some sci-fi movies where they put a big planet next to the Earth and you can just see how big it is in the backdrop, and there's not really much sky, there's just a planet there. Well, imagine the force of this planet. If it comes in on the Pacific, by the time it gets to Israel, think back to the flood. By the time it reaches Israel, because the Pacific in California, let's say where I grew up, is the 33rd parallel, right? And that 33rd parallel goes all the way to Israel. So if it came from behind the sun the last time, by the time it got to Israel, all the damage it really did was part the sea. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And, and the fact is that the Colburn, the Coel book portion of the Colburn describes that event, actually calling it the destroyer. And so this is a very interesting testimony. So I just wanted to confirm that this is what you had seen. And now, when you talk about Trump coming back, so you believe Trump is going to win in 2024?
Oh, I know. I don't even believe it. I just know it.
Okay, now what about the fact that Trump has recently said he's going to introduce guillotine in the United States?
He is gonna, didn't we talk about that a week before? Didn't I? I think we talked about that in one of our recordings for my testimony where I said that to you. I told you the vision from 1980 about that very issue. And then a week later, now we've never heard this. We've heard of the guillotines. We know they've been around. We've seen people making videos about it. It's out there. The new that they bought 30,000 suitcase new guillotines for USA. We kind of know that information, but I mean, the timing of it was a little bit provocative, right? I mean, didn't we just speak about it? We just spoke about it in depth on the last show, you and I. Nobody's heard any of it because we're doing private recordings until such time we can get the whole testimony to you. But so the timing of it I know it's him, because it falls in line with my testimony of the vision Elohim gave me in the 80s when he wrote The Art of the Deal and I didn't know why I didn't like him. I just knew that there was something, like, I'm very in tune spiritually to, I guess it's entities. I would say it has to be entities, because these are seriously, there's something else going on in leadership with all these people. Can't call them human, they've got something more going on spiritually that, and I'm very sensitive to it. It really, so I was really troubled by Trump when I was younger, but when Elohim woke me and showed me, and he told me in 2015, before Trump announced his run, that Trump's going to become president, serve 8 years, and he explained all these details. And then he said, America will be first in this war. America will be hit first. Well, that hit first is the mandatory injections. And I do believe that the mandatory injections are going to be the first thing that happens. And America, and the beheadings, okay? And the ones that don't take it, that refuse it, are going to be the example for the rest of the world. Because who does the rest of the world follow? They follow USA, right?
Well, I'll tell you, these are pretty sobering words you're delivering here, Lisa, because of course we know that, I have been talking for some time about the fact that I believe that the jab is the mark. And I've said this before. We know that particularly the mRNA component inside the jab, which now we know is, not only does it produce an mRNA antenna, Jesse and I did a show recently with Mark Steele. And Mark gave us basically the inside information on the 5G protocol and what's there and so on and so forth. And we talked about the idea about the nanobots forming an antenna inside your body. And also, but the mRNA component has the capability to give you a third strand of DNA, a triple helix. And we know that with the triple helix, I mean, if you don't mind here, just a minute, let me share the whiteboard, because after all, we can do that. And that's the fun part of this show, is sharing the whiteboard. I enjoy it anyway. I don't know about the rest of you. Okay.
Well, we like to watch you scribble on the whiteboard. I'm just kidding.
So what we see with double helix, right? You got the double helix, and the double helix has this idea of 72,000 genes going in this direction, and 72,000 genes going in this direction. So 72,000 and 72,000 gives us 144,000. So there's 140. So this is the number of those with salvation. They have the number 144,000. But if you add a third strand DNA, the triple helix that was proposed by the Queen, by the way, then we have to add another 72,000 to it in order to replicate the RNA. So what we end up with at this point is now we have 3 times 72K.
216.
Which gives us 216,000. Now, 216,000 is a very interesting sum, Because if we take the number 60 and we multiply by 6, well, we get 360. And if we multiply that by 600, we get 216,000. So 216,000 is 60 times 6 times 600. So,
And go ahead.
so with that being the case, you can see that what we're talking about here is we're talking about a triple helix evidencing the number of the beast. Evidencing the number of the beast. So with that being said, what does it say in that passage in Revelation 13? That he will cause them, rich and poor, great and small, all to receive either the name, the number, or the mark of the beast, and that those who do not will not be able to buy and sell. Now, what's amazing to me is that you have this huge death rate coming in. I mean, really, it's in excess of 34 million people worldwide who have died from this jab.
Mm.
And there's no rising up anywhere in the world. It's the greatest genocide perpetrated in this century for sure. No one is rising up in the world to say a thing about it. It's like, well, you know, whatever, I guess we've got a genocide going on, dear. I guess that's the way it is. We just have to live with it. Well, do we? And because we're living with it, now this genocide is moving into another phase. And the genocide is moving to another phase where, well, we're going to make this, the CDC has now made it part of the panoply of vaccines that all children must have. And there is a push, as you mentioned before, in the medical ID to determine whether or not you've been vaccinated. They're doing a reporting system now to determine the vax from the unvaccinated. By the way, it's very easy to tell because people who have been vaccinated evidence a barcode, evidence an ID, a Bluetooth ID reader. So then what's going to happen? Well, there's already discussion. People are saying, well, those who have, like Martha Stewart did an ad, and she's sitting there in her kitchen with a samurai sword and a sharpening stone, and she's sharpening the samurai. You need to get vaccinated. You need to get vaccinated while she sharpens the samurai sword. Now you see that there's discussion about, well, you're going to lose all medical benefits. You're not going to be able to go to the doctor. You're not going to be able to do, and in fact, in the discussion in the States is, you're not going to be able to get any federal benefit whatsoever unless you can show evidence that you have taken the mark of the beast.
Mm.
And we know that in the social credit system score, that one of the, you're going to be marked to 0 unless you can prove evidence of the mark of the beast. And if you don't have it, you will not be able to buy or sell. Now, the discussion that you and I are having right here tonight, that we're having here tonight, is a fearsome discussion, especially for those people who thought that Trump was the Messiah. And believe me, there are many of those, right?
Yes.
There are roughly 70 million of those people in the United States who believe that. And now he's going to introduce guillotines. He's the one that introduced Operation Warp Speed, which, by the way, is Kabbalah, right? It has the Kaaba, the square, on its insignia. And so what you see is that, here we go. So for all of those who objected when I came out in August of 2020 and said, this is the mark, well, now here it is. It's very, very clear that if you don't have it, you will not be able to buy or sell. And that the intention is to line up everybody to the guillotine that does not have it. Am I correct about this?
Absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's what's coming. And I saw the vision in 1980. And when it comes, sadly, all the celebrities everybody has worshipped are going to be standing by, celebrating and saying who they are, what they worship, and coming out on national TV while this is taking place is a complete mockery. It's going to be like Martha Stewart's little TV ad on national TV. And put the fear in the rest of humanity around the globe to take that mandatory injection.
Yeah, there's a problem. There's a problem though. Russia is a terrible problem. They're not going to go away. You know, they have vaccinations in Russia, but none of them are mRNA vaccines. None.
Right. Like the Sparta vaccine that they introduced, or the Sputnik vaccine.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know how there's a problem with Russia when Putin is a Freemason.
Well, the fact that Putin was a Freemason does not necessarily mean that he's being dictated to by the Masons. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. You know, a lot of what Putin does is to obtain inside information because he was a KGB agent. And you have to keep in mind that Putin's German is so good, he can work as a translator in the German language, right? Because he worked in East Germany for 18 years. So he's quite fluent and quite understanding of these things. And people say, well, he's Illuminati, or he's a Freemason, or he's this, that, or the other thing. But I can tell you that to the extent he is Russian before he's any of that stuff. And I mean, like, let me continue on with this prophecy here, and I'll show you why. That even though when I think when we look at Jeremiah, it looks fearsome, but yet when you see it, what it is, the plans of these antichrists and the plans of these demons, these Satanists and these Illuminists, they're going to be subverted. And the promise, you're going to see that inside of Jeremiah is a promise to Yah's children. There is a promise here, and I'm going to get to that. So let's take a look. Let me go back to sharing the screen here. And we'll see if we can get through some of this prophecy here. So here we see, make bright the arrows, gather the shields. Yahuah has raised up the ruach of the kings of Madai. For his device is against Babel to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of Yahuah, the vengeance of his temple. Okay, so we saw this passage before. Now let's keep going. Every man is brutish by his knowledge. Every founder is confounded by graven image. For his molten image is falsehood, and there is no breath in them. They are vanity, the work of errors. In the time of their visitation, they shall perish. The portion of Yaakov is not like them. For he is the former of all things, and Yasharel is the rod of his inheritance. Yahuah Tsebaot is his name. You are my battle axe and weapons of war. For with you will I break in pieces the nations, and with you will I destroy kingdoms. And with you will I break in pieces the horse and his rider, and with you will I break in pieces the chariot and his rider. Now, if you don't think that's not what's going on in Ukraine right now, you haven't seen the videos. They have blown up the chariot and his rider over and over and over again. 7,900 tanks have already been destroyed in Ukraine. With you also will I break in pieces man and woman, and with you will I break in pieces old and young, and with you will I break in pieces the young man and the maid. I will also break in pieces with you the shepherd and his flock, and with you will I break in pieces the husbandman and the yoke of oxen, and with you will I break in pieces captains and rulers, and I will render unto Babel and unto all of the inhabitants of Kasdima at all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, says Yahuah. Behold, I am against you, O destroying mountain. So that's Babel, says Yahuah, which destroy all the earth. I will stretch out my hand upon you and roll you down from the rocks, and I will make you a burnt mountain. And they shall not take of you a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundations, but you shall be desolate forever, says Yahuah. Set ye up a standard in the land, blow the shofar among the nations, prepare the nations against her, call together against her the kingdoms of Ararat, that's Armenia, Mini, that's Georgia, and Ashkenaz, that's Belarus, and appoint a captain against her. Cause the horses to come up as the rough caterpillars. Prepare against her the nations with the kings of Madai, that's Iran-Russia alliance. The captains thereof and all the rulers thereof and all the land of his dominion. Well, this has already happened. They've already gone into what's called mobilization in all of these lands. They're calling up all of the people thereof in the land of their dominion. They're calling them all up like caterpillars. And the land shall tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of Yahuah shall be performed against Babel, to make the land of Babel a desolation without an inhabitant. The mighty men of Babel have forborne to fight. This is what's going on right now. They can't get troops in the U.S. military. They're down 25% from their recruitment goals because nobody will join. And they can't even draft people in the United States because 85% of the young generation that would be of fighting age is too out of shape to fight.
There's
What happened?
there's another problem too. Real quick, this country's military has been fighting wars against insurgent wars, against terrorists, against people in little black suits in the jungle. They have not faced a war like Second World War. They don't fight that way anymore. They don't know what they would do if they come up. They cannot go against a Russian military. Now, you remember the Russians destroyed Germany in 1945. The Russians did that. America didn't do that. Russian army, the Red Army did that. The bulk of it. So
Who destroyed Ukraine in 1906? That's when my grandmother, in 1907, who killed like 160,000 Jews, I think.
probably the Bolsheviks.
No, 1907. That was
Yeah.
1907 was the Germans. And there was in Ukraine, we need to be clear about this, Lisa.
Yeah.
There has always been an anti-Semitic crowd in Ukraine, the anti-Jew big time in Ukraine. And these, for instance, when you look at the pogroms that were run under the Tsar, they were run by Ukrainian troops that were Jew haters, the best way to understand it. And those Jew haters, then when the war was fought, when the Tsar fought the war against Germany in World War I, Germany and the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, remember what I said earlier in the program, a vast majority of the Ukrainian people are Germanic, not Slavic. The Russian
Galatian.
speakers are Slavic,
Yeah.
but the Galatian, that's the best way to understand it. And
Western
so these
Ukraine.
people,
Yeah.
or they fought on behalf of the Kaiser. And the Tsar had to cede. In fact, when the Bolsheviks took power, which was a decade after your parents left,
Yeah.
when the Bolsheviks took power, they ceded property. They ceded Russian national state to the Germans, to the Austrian-Hungarians. They ceded property to them, including big portions of Poland, big portions of Belarus, big portions of Ukraine. These were ceded to them. And then the Russians began to move back in to Ukraine. But you have to keep in mind that when the Soviet Union was formed, this was a community that was run by Jews. The Russian collective state was Jewish. Stalin was a Jew. The head of the KGB was a Jew. The head of the GRU was a Jew. Yeah, they were.
But they killed Jews too. So
they were, well, yeah, but the vast majority of the people they killed were Russian Orthodox. So the Jewish persecution was not high on the list. But when Hitler invaded Ukraine, after they broke the Molotov Treaty, once they invaded the Ukraine, about half of Ukraine joined the Nazi Party. They were called the Banderites. There was a Ukrainian leader named Stepan Bandera, who was a Jew hater and a Nazi, and they joined the Nazi regiment. And you remember, there were about 1 million Jews executed in Ukraine, and they were executed by the Banderites. They were executed. And when you look at the picture, when you go to the Holocaust Museum, there's a picture up there. There's videos of Jews being rounded up, put in a ditch, and then all of them shot. There's a picture of a guy in a Nazi uniform with his sniper rifle shooting a woman holding a baby, a Jewish woman holding a baby. Those pictures were taken in Ukraine, and the people that did that stuff were Ukrainians. They weren't Germans. There were only 85,000 German Jews killed. There was 1 million in Ukraine, 1 million in Belarus, 1 million in Poland
Of the Jews?
of the Jews. It was
Okay, so,
Ukrainian
but I want to
troops.
explain, can I share something on that issue? Because it's important. It's
Go ahead.
something I've been wanting to get to with you in the previous shows. So this thing of Jews killing Jews is significant, okay? And so that's what my screenplay is about, by the way, about the Holocaust. But my screenplay that I wrote was about the Holocaust from a Christian point of view. At the time, I wrote it in '95, and the doors to Hollywood were open to me. And it was about Jews killing Jews. So it was a movie about the 10 million others that were killed in the Holocaust. And I took this to Sid Sheinberg, who's a Jew in Hollywood who just did Schindler's List. And even with all that I went through, with that script coming out and trying to point the truth to everyone, he still opened his doors to me for the rest of his life and said, anything you want to bring to me, anything you write, come on in. So I know that he knew the truth, and he had a respect level for it, what was happening. And I only knew it.
We know the truth. We know this, Lisa. And, you know, we know, for instance, that there was a deal that was made that was going to get the Jews out of Hungary for like $24 a piece. And it was Jews in Switzerland that had it jacked up to 80,000 a piece. I mean, we know these things.
No, it's bigger than that. It's a spiritual thing I'm trying to share with you. So when I've seen a lot of my family members be taken away, be killed. And I, almost lost my life in 2015. And I had to do the research and find out what's going on, why, and to learn that it's the Freemasons who took oaths to protect and honor my bloodlines. Knowing this, the things that were revealed to me about why is a very spiritual reason. So I want to share it with you about the Jews that are killing Jews, the synagogue of Satan, right? That's killing, and Christians. Okay, in every war, it's the Jew and the Christian, if you look back in history. And it's coming on, we're coming on a persecution again of the Christian and the Jew. And they're, so the Zionists, I'll just call them the doom and gloom of the world, okay? The demons doom and gloom, because that's how it was explained to me by Elohim. So they are the bank. We know who they are. The two big names you can think of, and I just don't want to go into that at the moment. But so the reason that this whole Jewish persecution and this anti-Semitism that they created to make hatred against the true Jews is for the fallen angels to wipe out that bloodline and get rid of the Jews. They've been trying to forever, since the beginning. So what's the population of the Jew in society right now? 0.03 of the world population has true 100% Jewish blood. Let that sink in, because that's huge. 0.03%, and they're still trying to wipe them out. And they're trying to, and now they've got everyone's DNA. People have gone on genealogy. They've given up their DNA, so they know where they are. And now they're creating a system to target it. And that's what they're doing in every country. They're targeting the Jews, because when Elohim woke me, so this is something that I haven't shared, but I don't know if I shared this with you in private, but when Elohim woke me, I asked him, because all my life I've wanted to know about the races. Like, explain the races to me. I don't understand. How were they created? So when I was dying was when he revealed to me how the races were created. So they were created with this knowledge, right? Because we know that from Enoch. They were given this each of them had their own knowledge. They had one knowledge. That's what they were in charge of. They didn't get to have everyone else's knowledge. They only had their knowledge. When they fell, they learned each other's knowledge. And then they made humanity learn all of it, all that knowledge that they weren't supposed to know, which has corrupted everything. But the race that the fallen angels, when they fell, that mated with Elohim's creation, creating their offspring, each of them had their own identity. Just like you and I have our identity and our facial features, we they each, so for every race that's out there of all the fallen angels, think, I don't know, it's a third, right? How many is that? Is it 270? Does anyone know the number? I don't know the number.
I don't know,
I
but
think-
Lisa, I can tell you that we could be here another 8 hours, and we can't do
Okay.
that. So
Sorry.
we got to limit our discussion here tonight. So I want to get to well, I'm going to kind of advance on the slides because I do want to show a couple of things, because I want to make sure that people have hope in their heart as to what is coming. Okay.
Okay.
And, so let me read through these passages, and then we're going to kind of wrap it if we can. For thus says Yahuah Sebaot, the Elohai of Yasharel, the daughter of Babel is like a threshing floor. It is time to thresh her, yet a little while, and the time of her harvest shall come. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, has devoured me. He's crushed me. He's made me an empty vessel. He has swallowed me up like a dragon. He's filled his belly with my delicacies, and he has cast me out. The violence done to me and to my flesh be upon Babel. Shall the inhabitant of Zion say, and my blood upon the inhabitants of Castema, shall Jerusalem say. Therefore, thus says Yahuah, behold, I will plead your cause and take vengeance for you, and I will dry up her sea and make her springs dry, and Babel shall become heaps, a dwelling place for dragons, an astonishment and a hissing without an inhabitant. My people, go ye out of the midst of her, and deliver ye every man his soul from the fierce anger of Yahuah, unless your heart faint, and ye fear for the rumor that shall be heard in the land. A rumor shall both come 1 year, and after that, in another year, shall come a rumor. Right? The rumors of war, and right, wars and rumors of war, and violence in the land, ruler against ruler. Therefore, behold, the days come that I will do judgment upon the graven images of Babel, and her whole land shall be confounded, and all her slain shall fall in the midst of her. Then the heavens and the earth and all that is therein shall sing for Babel, for the spoiler shall come unto her from the north, says Yahuah. That pretty much tells you who's going to be here, because it's not going to be the Canadians. I can tell you that.
No.
Babel has caused the slain of Yasharel to fall, so at Babel shall fall the slain of all the earth. Wherefore, behold, the days come, says Yahuah, that I will do judgment upon her graven images, and through all her land, and the wounded shall groan. Though Babel should mount up to heaven, though she should fortify the height of her strength, yet from me shall spoilers come under her, says Yahuah. A sound of a cry comes from Babel, and a great destruction from the land of the Casdim, because Yahuah has spoiled Babel and destroyed out of her the great voice. When her waves do roar like great waters, a noise of their voice is uttered, because the spoiler has come upon her, even upon Babel, and upon her, and her mighty men are taken. Every one of their bows is broken. For Yahuah El of recompenses shall surely requite, and I will make drunk her princes and her wise men. That's what's going on right now. Her captains and her rulers and her mighty men, and they shall sleep a perpetual sleep and not wake, says the king, whose name is Yahuah Sebaot. Thus says Yahuah Sebaot, the broad walls of Babel shall be utterly broken, and her high gates shall be burned with fire, and the people shall labor in vain, and the folk in the fire, and they shall be weary. And we finish with this. After these things, I heard a great voice of many people in heaven saying, Hallelujah, Yeshua, and glory and honor and power unto Yahuah Eloheinu. For true and righteous are his judgments, for he has judged the great whore, which did corrupt the earth with her fornication, and has avenged the blood of his servants at her hand. And again they said, Hallelujah, and her smoke rose up forever and ever. And the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures fell down and worshipped Elohim that sat upon the throne, saying, Amen and Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Amen.
So, yeah. So take comfort, and I want to leave this with the people that are here today. Take comfort in the fact that the house of Yasharel and even the tents of Yehudah shall be protected in the hand of Yahuah Sebaot, who is raising up his hand right now in preparation for the complete destruction of Babel. For the believer, come out, come out, come out. So I want to thank you guys. Thank you, Jessica Knock, for hanging in there this late with us tonight and being a great
you, Jessica.
administrator of the troops. John Barr, your feedback is always very well appreciated. Thank you, brother. Elisa Maria, thank you for bringing forth your, the visions and so on that you have seen for our
Amen.
discussion this
Amen.
evening. So with that, we're going to save it. We're going to keep it. We're going to ask people to share it, and we'll see if it survives on YouTube.
Nice
We'll
to
see
meet
if it survives.
you, Lawrence.
Thank
But
you,
we'll
Bye,
see.
Stephen. Yeah,
Jessica.
very appreciative of the
Definitely,
viewers
yeah.
today for what you've shared and what you brought. That's very,
Yeah.
very significant a comment here today.
Excellent.
you.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Good to
Lisa.
hear. Okay, guys. All right. So with that, we praise Yah in heart, mind, and soul, lifting his name over us as a cover. May he always be with us, bless us, and keep us. Amen. And we will see you guys
Amen.
next week on the dig. Bring your shovel.
Bye-bye.